Marvel Rivals has the potential to tell a great story if it's done properly. A lot of PvP games have stories attached to them, but the problem is always how the stories are told. It's never as effective as, say, a single player game, where the story is told to you directly. The main problem with this, I guess, lies in the fact that what you do moment to moment in the game doesn't necessarily relate to the story. So, for example, in Marvel Rivals itself, you could pick a whole cast of characters that don't necessarily mesh together and have them fighting alongside each other. While there is a cool addition of some dialogue between certain characters, it isn't necessarily going too deep into the story. Yes, it does share some tidbits, but isn't exactly storytelling per se, because once you're fighting, in the field, those conversations just don't happen anymore. They literally only happen while you're selecting your characters, and that's pretty much it. The challenge with trying to tell a story within a PvP game is the fact that most of the time you're just combating other players. And so it's hard to put those minute details of storytelling properly in order to, tell a cohesive ongoing story. Now, other games I'll give examples of do tell stories in a way, but again, it's not really as effective. Marvel itself is different because it's based on, comics, movies, all different types of media that particularly relates to storytelling as a whole. And so that's why I believe that this story has the potential to be great. Now, what do I mean by the story would need to be told properly? Now, I guess this is where I'd go into some examples, specifically with a few other PvP live service games. So, some examples I'll draw on are games that I play myself, so The Finals, Apex Legends, and Fortnite. To begin, let's just talk about The Finals. So, The Finals story takes place in a not so distant future where virtual reality technology has essentially taken over, and you play as a combatant within a virtual reality competition or game show called The Finals. Its story is delivered through cutscenes that normally play either when you log into the game or through some trailers that they share. So a specific example was the release of Season 2. When Season 2 released, there was a takeover of the finals competition by a company that hacked into them called CNS. What was happening was delivered through Scotty and June having a conversation as the game was booting up, which sort of gave an idea of, what's happening. But further than that, when you're playing the game and they're commentating what's happening in the game, they do at times, speak about what's happening. But because you as the player are focusing on, winning the current match, they can't necessarily go too deep into what's happening. And so it does tend to shy a bit from what's actually happening. But I believe their implementation of it is okay. If not a bit weak in terms of going in depth with what's going on. But again, with the finals, it's already a very loose game in terms of story. As with other live service games, it's made to just be a continuous game that you can play over and over again without the need to worry about finishing the story and not having anything left. So yeah, there's that. Now, the one major critique I have with this type of storytelling, well, live service storytelling entirely, which I'll also touch on with the others, is preservation. Now, a lot of the story, once, for example, a certain season is finished, or once you've seen the cutscene or whatever, it's normally just gone. You can't really access it unless you save, the video, or somebody makes a YouTube video about it, things like that. But within the game itself, it's normally just lost. And this is where I believe Marvel Rivals could make a difference, because again, Marvel Rivals is based off of, majority or mainly storytelling content. So with Marvel Rivals specifically, what I do know of the story so far is that two Doctor Dooms, one from 2099 and the other from, but I don't know, are currently engaged in some sort of fight, which that fight has then led to time just being like mixed up and jumbled all together. Now, personally, for me to find this out, I had to, Google this, and that's how I found this information. I do believe through like some text that you unlock with specific characters, like text-based lore, that you can then find this out. But the majority of it, I don't think will be that well explained within the game. The reason being that, according to Comics Explained, when I watched their video, Marvel Rivals has a web comic of sorts, like a digital comic that they're releasing that will specifically deal with the story, and I think it's going to have about 5 issues, with one out now, and I think the others weekly, so there should be more than one out. I'm not sure. I haven't read it myself, but personally, the reason why I'm making this video is really about that. With games specifically, you have so much that you can do with them. So I believe, for example, they could have the comic within the game, even if that means you purchase it using the in-game currency or whatever, but have it within the game so that I'm then able to access this information whenever I choose. The problem with it being outside is, should they ever stop selling that comic? I know it's digital, so they could sell it forever, really. It's not going to run out of prints or whatever. But a problem with having it outside is, one, it's cool. I mean, I personally am working on like a cross media story that is told through, a web comic and a game. But the difference there is, you don't necessarily need to engage with the other to understand the other. The other is a complete package on its own. So with this, I believe that having the comic within the game will only improve, the odds of people actually like caring about the story. Which then brings me to the second example, which is Apex Legends. Now, with Apex Legends, I only really joined, I think, from season 13 onwards, but I had been, following the story bit by bit here and there. So its story is told primarily through, I'd say, 3 means, which is stories of the Outlands, which are like trailers that give some sort of story relating to a character. Those are normally posted online on YouTube, etc. The second would be through in-game events. So at first they used to have like comics that used to tell the story, which were unlocked through like those red packs. I forgot what they're called. The packs that you should find when you open like the pills. And then the last one is through in-game dialogue with the characters. So Apex is currently on like, I think, season 23, 24. Now, because of that, there's been so much that has happened within the story. Again, I think it depends on perspective, but there's been a lot of, back and forth, certain things happening, characters fighting, that fights coming to resolutions, etc. But the main focus, I guess, the main one that probably everybody that plays Apex knows of is the Loba Revenant arc situation that didn't necessarily have an end, but it's just on hold for now, I guess, as characters get added or changes happen, etc. So again, with this one as well, 2 of the parts that I mentioned happen within the game, while the other part happens outside of the game, which is the stories of the Outlands. The stories of the Outlands are normally, or should I say were normally, made properly, where you can get like a lot of good information about a specific character. Recently they've stopped making these, so we're not getting much lore about them, about the new characters. But then again, this whole year, 2024, there's only been like one character added, which is Alta, which she did have, her introductory trailer and everything, which kind of gave some lore. But since then, it's kind of been a bit dry. Admittedly, I believe that Apex's storytelling is a bit better than the finals. Firstly, because you have like voiced characters that can, show personality. In between matches, they can discuss whatever's happening between them, things like that. So that is a bit better. But then, of course, as the seasons go on and things change, that certain voice lines and dialogue between characters disappears, and then it's just gone unless somebody keeps track of it outside of the game. Now, with Apex, I guess it's a bit hard to say, how they should keep this, because you can't necessarily have all of it together within the game. Like, I don't think it's possible to have all these different voice lines and things like that saved within the game, because it wouldn't necessarily make sense. But one idea for how Apex could handle it, for example, they did a one-off like event sort of, where you played as Loba. I think it was just before the major conflict between Loba and Revenant, before the whole Revenant Reborn situation, where there was like a solo mission. I mean, I don't have much footage of it, but this is what I had. But you just played as Loba, and you had to like infiltrate this place in order to get something. I don't remember what, but again, that's gone now. It was literally like a limited time mode that you could only access back then, which, while cool, again, preservation wise, it's kind of gone. Any new players to the game just can't do anything about it. I guess it's gone. So yeah, leading back to Marvel Rivals, I believe having more maybe like dialogue in between matches, I guess it would be kind of distracting, but having more things and more ways of characters interacting with each other would be cool, not just while you're waiting for the match to start up. That could help. But yeah, then the last one I guess I have in mind is in Fortnite. So Fortnite's in a different position altogether. So firstly, there's the Save the World mode, which gladly is still there in the game, and its story is still intact. So that, I guess, satisfies the whole preservation argument I have. But that's no longer the main mode of the game. So when we look to Battle Royale, that still has the same issues, right? So with Fortnite specifically, you don't have a voiced character, of course, but you do have a lot of NPCs spread around the map, and through talking to them, you can then find out what's happening in the season. Some have disputes with others, some work together, etc. But in a battle royale, not many people have the time or the patience to actually sit and to read each and every single dialogue entry from each and every single NPC, which is great because you have well, it's not great, but the alternative to that is that you have channels such as like PlayStation Grenade, who every now and then will release a video just detailing whatever's been happening within the story, different changes to the map, different dialogue, etc. But within the game itself, none of this is actually preserved, so there's no one way to actually know what's been happening in the lore without, again, looking outwards. Yes, they do have the season events, but as of late the story seems to have gone to the wayside. Hopefully with this new chapter we'll sort of get more story and lore, because things such as the map changes and different changes season to season always have like some sort of lore implication to them, so it'll be cool to have those available. And I don't know, for Fortnite, it's more possible to make essentially a map that is just the story up until now, so you play through the events and whatever, even if they frame it in like a single player type of situation where you're just playing through the different chapters, not necessarily a PvP area, because that would also just make things more complicated. But I don't know, that for me seems more possible within Fortnite. I'm going back to Marvel Rivals, which again is the main reason why I made this video, but I believe they have a chance to really make the story great. Firstly, let's find a way to preserve the story within the game. That way, whoever joins in, like, years down the line, because I believe this game does have the potential to, stick around for years, but whoever joins in later on will have easy access to, what's been happening, specifically because with how Marvel works and the different universes and timelines and all these things, that would then mean that this story in its own way would become canon. Not overall canon, but just canon in a way. It could be a different version of, a multiverse or whatever. Its happenings will have some sort of impact down the line in Marvel history. I mean, given we have a character such as Luna is an entirely new character to Marvel, so her inclusion might then mean that she then gets, different stories down the line, whether it be through comics, animated series, whatever, depending on like fan reception of the character. But outside of that, the story itself would have the potential to continue to grow. So there's already like a few elements that are within the game. Firstly, you have Doctor Doom. We know that in current MCU, Robert Downey Jr. is returning as Doctor Doom, which then means that there is, of course, the potential of, a playable Doctor Doom in future. We have Galacta as the announcer, which means in some way we may eventually get Galactus himself. There's a bunch of different things that they can do with the story going forward, and my hope is just that, well, apart from the execution of how it's told, but also I hope for the preservation, that the story can continuously be accessed by players down the line, without having to resort to different things outside the game. But yeah, hope you liked the video. If you do like it, please leave a like, subscribe, all that nice stuff. And yeah, check you in the next video.